The air in the garage always felt a little warmer when the job was done. I was wiping down the last of the tools, the click of metal against metal echoing softly off the concrete walls. That day's work had been ordinary: 2 brake jobs, 1 radiator replacement, and an old Mustang that stalled whenever it idled. I triple-checked the shop lights and locked up, watching the Denver suburbs fall into dusk through the dusty garage window. My name's Mason Rourke. I'm 41. I own a small but honest auto repair shop just outside of Littleton. Been running it for about 12 years now. When I pulled into the driveway that night, the porch light was already on. Dana's car sat in its usual place, spotless as ever, even though she never drove it more than a few miles a day. I could hear the clink of dishes through the window before I stepped inside. "Hey," I said as I walked into the kitchen, hanging my keys on the hook by the door. "Hey," she replied without turning around. She was rinsing lettuce, her voice flat, her shoulders stiff. "How was your day?" I asked, setting my lunchbox on the counter. "Fine. Just that. No follow-up. No smile. Just fine." I tried again. "I got the Mustang finished. That guy from Golden, turns out it wasn't the carburetor after all. Just the idle control valve." "Uh-huh." She still hadn't looked at me. The silence wrapped around us like heavy fog. I stood there for a beat too long, then grabbed a beer from the fridge and leaned against the counter. "Where's Caleb?" "Upstairs. Homework." I nodded slowly. "Robotics stuff again?" "I guess." It wasn't always like this. There was a time Dana used to smile when I came home. She used to greet me at the door, ask about the shop, even let me rub her feet while she told me about her clients and catering mishaps and how ridiculous corporate people could be. But somewhere between then and now, something had frozen over. I took a breath. "Dana, look, are we going to keep pretending everything's okay?" She turned finally. Her eyes were blank, her mouth a straight line. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say something. Anything that isn't just one-word answers." She sighed and dried her hands with a dish towel. "Mason, I'm tired. I work all day talking to people who treat everything like a crisis, and then I come home to you looking at me like I've disappointed you. That's not. I didn't sign up to be married to a man who lives in grease and feelings," she cut in. "You think every emotion needs dissecting. Not everyone wants to sit down and talk about what's wrong all the time." "That's not fair," I said quietly. She dropped the towel on the counter. "What's not fair is feeling like I have 2 children in this house instead of 1. That one stung." I glanced upstairs, where Caleb was probably hunched over his sketches, earphones in, lost in circuits and measurements. At least he still talked to me. "I'm not trying to fight," I said. Dana shook her head. "Then don't. Just let it be." And just like that, she walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there with my untouched beer and a cold pit in my stomach. Upstairs, I heard the faint scratch of Caleb's pencil. That sound, that tiny, normal sound, was the only thing that didn't feel broken. 3 weeks later, it all came apart. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Dana always worked from home on Tuesdays, and the kitchen usually smelled like coffee and burnt toast. That morning was no different. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in after closing up early at the shop. Caleb was still at school. The house was quiet except for the ticking wall clock and the soft hum of the fridge. "Hey," I said, slipping off my jacket. "Everything okay?" She looked up, not with anger, not even irritation, just cold detachment. "Sit down," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp. It was worse, clinical. I froze for a second before pulling out the chair across from her. That's when I saw the folder on the table. Plain manila, nothing dramatic. But my gut twisted the second I saw my name written on the tab in Dana's perfect handwriting. She pushed it across to me. "Read it." I didn't move right away. My fingers hovered over it, like it might burn me. "What is this?" I asked. "A trial separation agreement," she said, like she was reciting a grocery list. I blinked at her. "You're serious?" "I've already spoken to an attorney." I opened the folder. There it was in black and white: custody proposal, asset division, visitation. The whole thing. She'd even highlighted the part where she requested full custody of Caleb. "You want sole custody?" My voice cracked before I could stop it. Dana didn't flinch. "Mason, you're too soft. You always have been. Caleb needs structure. He needs to grow up with someone who knows how to lead, not someone who clings to him like a security blanket." I just stared at her. She went on. "You think being emotional makes you a good father. It doesn't. It makes you unstable. You cry in front of him. You overreact to everything. It's confusing for him. That's not true. She tilted her head, calm as ever. He's 13. He needs strength, not coddling. I love him, I said. That's not a flaw. Dana sighed. You're not hearing me. This is what's best for him. I looked down at the document again. Her attorney's name. A deadline to respond. The weight of it all crashed into me like a truck. I'm not giving up my son, I said, but even to me, it sounded weak. Then fight me, she said. But I'll tell the court what they need to hear. That you're emotionally unstable. That you can't handle conflict. That your need to connect is really just fragility. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. And in that silence, Dana pushed a pen across the table. You can sign now or later. But you're not keeping him. I signed. Because in that moment, I didn't know how not to. It happened on a Wednesday. Caleb wasn't supposed to be home until 4. Early release days were rare at his middle school, but that week had been conference week. I forgot all about it until I heard the front door creak open around 2. I was under the hood of a Chevy Impala in the garage, grease up to my elbows, when my phone buzzed with a security notification from the smart lock. Front door opened. Caleb. I wiped my hands and checked the camera feed just to be sure. There he was, backpack slung over one shoulder, sneakers half untied, shuffling through the foyer like he was trying not to make any noise. I thought about calling out to him through the intercom, but something stopped me. He didn't look right. Not tired or upset, more like cautious. Like he was tiptoeing through a place that didn't feel like home. I let it go, figuring he was just trying to sneak in snacks before homework. That's what 13-year-olds did. What I didn't know, what I'd only pieced together later, was what he saw when he climbed those stairs. Caleb told me about it much later, in fragments. The way a kid does when they're still trying to make sense of something that shouldn't make sense at all. He said he heard voices, his mother's, unmistakably. But not the voice she used when reading bedtime stories or talking to teachers. This was different. Softer. Laughing. Then there was the other voice. A man's. Deep and low. At first, Caleb thought she was on the phone. But when he got closer to the master bedroom, the voices didn't stop. They got louder. And then he heard the bed creak. He opened the door a crack, just enough to see Dana and a man he'd never seen before. His arm was around her bare shoulder. Her hair was down, makeup still on, like she hadn't even planned to clean up before Caleb got home. Caleb froze. He said he didn't even breathe. That's when Dana looked up and saw him. According to Caleb, she didn't gasp. She didn't shout. She just went still for a beat. Then calmly, she pulled the blanket higher over herself and got up. She met him in the hallway, closing the door behind her. What are you doing home? She asked sharply. Caleb mumbled something about early release. He couldn't remember exactly. He said she grabbed his arm, hard. Not enough to knock him over, but enough to leave a faint bruise on his upper forearm. You didn't see anything, she said, her voice cold. Do you hear me? He nodded, already swallowing back tears. If you tell your father, she went on, crouching so she was eye level with him, I will make sure you never see him again. Understand? He'll lose everything. You'll be stuck here full time, and believe me, I won't forget it. Caleb said he just nodded again. Then he went in his room, locked the door, and sat on the floor until I got home. That night, he said nothing. Not a word about what he saw. But I remember knocking on his door to say goodnight and hearing the faintest sniffle on the other side. I asked if he was okay. He said, yeah, just tired. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. The call came while I was under a truck. Literally. I had one hand bracing a rusted exhaust pipe and the other reaching for a socket wrench when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. But something in my gut told me not to. Mason Rourke, the voice on the other end, asked. Speaking. This is Thomas Keeley. I represent Dana Rourke. I'm calling to inform you that the petition for divorce and a request for sole custody has been filed. You'll be formally served later today. I didn't say anything at first. Just lay there under the truck, staring up at the grease-caked undercarriage like it might offer an explanation. Mr. Rourke. Yeah, I finally muttered. I got it. He hung up without another word. I finished the job on autopilot, barely aware of what I was tightening or adjusting. My hands were working, but my brain had gone somewhere cold and distant. By the time I got home that evening, I felt like I was moving through molasses. The driveway was empty, Dana's car gone. The house was silent. I found Caleb in the living room, curled up with his laptop and sketchpad, headphones in. He looked up when I came in and gave me a quick smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hey, kiddo, everything okay? I asked. He nodded, too quickly. Yeah, Just working on the arm mechanics for the robot. Looks cool, I said, sitting down across from him. You hungry? Not really. He kept his eyes on the page. His pencil was trembling in his hand. I didn't push. I just watched him for a moment, that ache in my chest growing heavier by the second. He was trying so hard to hold it together. I recognized that look. I wore it every day now. That night, around 8, the doorbell rang. 2 envelopes. One for divorce. One for custody. Inside the envelope was everything Dana had threatened and more. She wasn't just asking for full custody. She was claiming I was emotionally erratic and incapable of providing a stable environment. There were vague claims of frequent emotional outbursts and inappropriate reliance on the child for emotional support. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, the documents spread out in front of me like a cruel joke. Then my phone buzzed again. A text. From Dana. I hope you're ready. You wanted emotions to be your strength. Let's see how well that holds up in court. I didn't reply. But upstairs, I could hear Caleb's door click shut. And something about the way it clicked, careful, deliberate, like he was trying not to disturb anything, broke me more than any of the papers in front of me. The first client cancellation came 3 days later. It was a father-son duo who'd been restoring a '68 Camaro with me for months. We were just about to start the custom paintwork when I got the email. Hey Mason, we've decided to go another direction. Nothing personal. Just think we need someone a little more stable for this kind of project. I stared at the screen, rereading that word. Stable. That night, I scrolled through my business's Yelp page. A couple of odd new reviews had popped up. One mentioned uncomfortable behavior and seemed emotionally off. Another claimed I yelled at a kid in the shop, which never happened. I knew who was behind it. Dana didn't need to scream or throw punches to tear someone down. She just needed whispers. She was always better at appearances than I was. The week after that, a restoration contract with a local collector, almost 30 grand's worth of work, was suddenly on hold indefinitely. The guy didn't even return my calls. Then came the social media posts. Dana didn't tag me directly, of course. That wasn't her style. But it wasn't subtle either. Some of us have to be the strong parent. Even when the other one falls apart, you do what you have to for your child's future. Even if it means walking away from someone who cries more than they care. Friends of hers started chiming in. Heart emojis. You're so brave. Caleb is lucky to have you. Lucky. I watched it all from my phone in the break room between oil changes, trying not to shake. One afternoon, my supplier for vintage Mustang parts called and told me, awkwardly, that he'd be pausing orders for a while. Just got some weird feedback, man, he mumbled. Stuff about your mental state. I dunno. Just laying low. I wanted to scream, but I just thanked him and hung up. Caleb had started growing quieter too. After his weekends with Dana, he'd come back pale, withdrawn. He'd go straight to his room, spend hours sketching in silence, only coming down when I coaxed him with grilled cheese or a rare soda. Everything okay, buddy? I asked one night. He looked up for a second, then back down at his sketch pad. Yeah, just tired. That was his new line. Just tired. But I saw it. The way he flinched when he got a text and saw it was from her. The way his eyes darted toward the door any time his mom was mentioned. I wanted to fix it. God, I wanted to fix all of it. But I felt like I was slipping further and further into a hole I didn't dig, being buried by lies I didn't tell. One night, I stood in my own shop, my pride, my legacy, and realized I was scared. Not just of losing my business, but of losing the one thing that still mattered, my son. And Dana? She wasn't just trying to erase me from Caleb's life. She was erasing me from everything, one rumor at a time. It was my sister April who finally snapped me out of it. She showed up at the shop unannounced one Thursday evening, just as I was closing up. She worked night shifts at the hospital and usually slept during the day, so her being there meant something was serious. She walked in wearing her scrubs, her hair tied back, and a look on her face that said she wasn't in the mood for small talk. You look like crap, she said, folding her arms. Nice to see you too, I muttered. She didn't smile. Mason, you've let this go on too long. I looked away. What do you want me to do, April? She's already filed. She's got the narrative. She's got people believing it. And what do you have? She shot back. Nothing. Because you're sitting here letting her spin the story while you hide in this garage like a wounded dog. I didn't answer. She walked past me, into the office, and sat down. Start writing, she said, pointing to my desk. What? A log. A record. Everything you've noticed. When Caleb looked shaken after being with her. When Dana sends you those little jabs and texts, any weird things you see or hear, timestamps, behavior changes, anything, we're building a case. April. I'm a trauma nurse, Mason. I see kids every week who've been emotionally manipulated by one parent to hate the other. It's subtle, but it's real, and it leaves marks you can't see. If you want to save Caleb, you need proof, not feelings, not speeches, evidence. Something clicked. Maybe it was the way she said save Caleb, like it was a rescue mission, because that's exactly what it felt like. I sat down, opened a notebook, and started writing. That weekend, when Caleb came back from Dana's, I paid attention. I noted how he hesitated before answering any question about his mom. How he asked, "Do I have to go back this Friday?" but wouldn't say why. I didn't push him. I just logged it. The following Wednesday, I noticed a small scratch on his wrist. When I asked about it, he said, I tripped. Then he changed the subject. April came over the next night with a color-coded spreadsheet. We're going to track patterns, she said. If there's a connection between his mood and time spent with her, we'll see it. And you'll show it to your lawyer. So I did. I began forwarding April the texts Dana had been sending, snide remarks, veiled threats, passive-aggressive digs about Caleb's emotional confusion. And Caleb, he started asking more questions. Dad, do you think feelings make you weak? Do you think moms can lie if they're scared? I always answered the same way. Feelings make you human. And the truth never changes, even if someone tries to hide it. April patted my shoulder as she left one night. You're not crazy, Mason. You're a dad. And you're not alone anymore. For the first time in weeks, I believed her. The break in the dam came from an unlikely place, an old client of mine named Rich Holloway. He ran a small dealership that flipped classic cars, and I'd helped him restore a vintage Dodge Charger about a year back. We hadn't talked in months. He called out of the blue one morning. Mason, he said, his voice tense. I think you should know something. I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the shop wall. What's up? I backed out of the Corvette job last month. The custom rebuild you quoted. I already knew that. I'd gotten the vague email. Yeah. He hesitated. I didn't want to say anything, but Dana's boyfriend came to see me. Chase something. Said it'd be a bad idea to keep doing business with you. That you were unstable. Not great to work with. My stomach dropped. He was pushy, Rich added. Like, too polished. The kind of guy who smiles while threatening you. Did he say his name? Chase Langdon. Think he runs some construction outfit. Big in zoning and permits, especially around Jefferson County. Chase Langdon. I'd heard the name before. Dana had mentioned him in passing once, back when we were still sharing meals instead of legal threats. A client, she'd said. Very connected. That night, I parked down the block from Dana's condo. I knew she and Caleb were out. He had a school robotics showcase. She told me not to come, said too much presence from both parents might confuse him. I waited until the lights came on inside. Then I watched. At 7:48 p.m., a tall man in a tailored coat walked up and used her keypad like he'd done it 100 times. He let himself in. I hit record on my phone and waited. At 8:17 p.m., they stepped out onto the balcony, laughing, wine glasses in hand. Dana leaned into him. He kissed her temple. She touched his chest like she owned him. I had enough. The next morning, I sent the footage to Leah Singh, my attorney. Smart, sharp, no nonsense. She called me within the hour. This changes things, she said. We've got a timeline now. This shows an ongoing affair, and with Chase's involvement in local business deals, it opens the door to coercion, especially if he's been interfering with your clients. You think it'll help in court? It'll crack her credibility wide open, especially if we can tie this to any pressure tactics. I'll pull some permits and records. If he's been sabotaging your business, we'll prove it. Later that week, April helped me piece together a pattern. 3 clients, all of whom had pulled out, had connections to city zoning. Guess who had signed off on their last inspections? Chase Langdon. Dana wasn't just cheating. She was building an entire narrative of control, with a man who knew how to pull strings behind the scenes. Now I had more than words. I had evidence. And finally, I had something Dana couldn't spin. It was Caleb's robotics teacher, Mr. Elwood, who first made the call. He left me a voicemail one Thursday afternoon while I was elbow-deep in a strip transmission. Hi, Mr. Rourke. I'm reaching out because I've noticed some changes in Caleb lately, withdrawn behavior, frequent zoning out, even missing some deadlines. I think it might be helpful if he spoke with our school counselor. Just to check in. Thought you should know. I called him back immediately. We agreed to let the counselor, Ms. Halverson, Meet with Caleb privately the next morning. I didn't say much, just thanked him for noticing. I barely slept that night. Caleb didn't fight the meeting. He didn't even ask questions. Just nodded when I told him and said, "Okay." That was it. No fear, no curiosity, just exhaustion. Later that day, Ms. Halverson called me directly. "Mr. Rourke, I think you need to hear this from me." I sat down at my workbench, heart pounding. "Is he okay?" She took a breath. "He's holding a lot. But today, he let some of it out." And then she told me. Caleb had walked into her office, sat on the edge of her couch, and started fidgeting with the cuff of his sleeve. It took a few minutes of silence, but then he just said it. "I saw my mom with someone who's not my dad." He described everything, how he came home early, the voices, the way Dana had grabbed him and told him to forget it ever happened. He told Ms. Halverson about the bruise on his arm, how it lasted for days, how his mom said if he told me, I'd lose custody and he'd never see me again. When the counselor gently asked if there had been other times his mom scared him, he nodded. "She says I'm soft like my dad, that I need to be tougher. She makes me talk about stuff I don't want to. If I don't say what she wants, she gets mad. Real mad." At one point, he pulled up his sleeve and showed her the faint bruise, mostly healed now, but still there. Faint yellow edges. That was enough. Ms. Halverson said she followed the mandated reporter protocol immediately. The school had submitted a formal report to Child Protective Services and notified the school board's legal liaison. "Your attorney will be contacted," she said. "But I wanted you to know first." I hung up the phone and just sat there for a long time. My hands were shaking. He had finally told someone. That night, when Caleb came home, I didn't push him. I just hugged him tight, longer than usual. He didn't pull away. He didn't say anything. But for the first time in weeks, he leaned into me like he was finally allowing himself to feel safe. Later, as I was locking up for the night, I got a text from Leah Singh. "The school called. We're going to court. And now we're bringing the truth with us." The courtroom was quiet the morning we walked in. Too quiet. I sat beside Leah at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Across the aisle, Dana looked flawless. She wore a navy blue blazer, minimal jewelry, and just the right amount of makeup to make her seem composed, but not rehearsed. She gave me a brief glance, one that didn't show a flicker of fear. She still thought she could win. The judge entered, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Dana's lawyer started with her statement, calm, polished, full of carefully worded concern. "Mrs. Rourke seeks sole custody not out of malice, but out of necessity. Her husband's emotional volatility, frequent breakdowns, and lack of professional boundaries make for a confusing and unstable home for their son." I didn't look at Dana, but I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to flinch. Then it was our turn. Leah stood up, calm as ever. "We intend to demonstrate that the accusations against Mr. Rourke are not only unfounded, but part of a deliberate campaign of character sabotage, one that has impacted his professional standing, his mental health, and most importantly, his relationship with his son." She handed out evidence packets, exhibits, witness summaries. Then we got into it. Leah played the video, the one I took of Dana and Chase on the balcony. There was a collective shift in the room. Dana didn't move. She didn't blink. But her foot started tapping beneath the table. Then came the messages, the text from Dana mocking my feelings, the ones hinting she'd tell the court whatever it took. The reviews, the business interference, the zoning department connections to Chase Langdon. Leah called Rich Holloway to the stand. He testified clearly and simply that Chase Langdon had visited him and suggested it would be risky to keep working with me. The judge raised her eyebrows at that. But the turning point came when Caleb was called to speak. He didn't have to testify in open court. The judge agreed to speak with him privately in chambers. We waited outside, Leah's hand steady on my shoulder the entire time. 28 minutes later, they returned. Dana's composure started to crack. Her foot tapped faster. Her breathing quickened. Then the judge spoke. "I've heard enough to make a preliminary determination regarding custody. The court finds substantial concern regarding the conduct of the plaintiff, particularly the coercive behavior described by the child and supported by school records and mandated reports." Dana's lawyer opened her mouth to object, but the judge cut her off. "Don't. Sit down." She turned to me. "Mr. Rourke, your emotional availability, while previously questioned, is not a weakness. It is a strength. Your son spoke clearly, with conviction, about your love, your patience, and your presence. That's what a child needs." Dana stood up suddenly. "He's lying. Caleb doesn't understand what he saw. The judge gave her a long, measured look. Mrs. Rourke, I strongly advise you to sit down before you do further damage to your position. Dana's lawyer tugged her sleeve gently, but she yanked her arm away and sat down hard, lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. The judge shuffled her papers and said the words I'd been waiting months to hear. Full custody will be awarded to Mr. Rourke. Mrs. Rourke will have supervised visitation pending a formal review. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Leah gave my arm a small squeeze. Across the room, Dana stared straight ahead, glassy-eyed, as if someone had just turned off the lights inside her. For the first time since this nightmare started, I saw her for what she was. And I wasn't afraid of her anymore. The official custody papers arrived 2 weeks later. I signed them at the kitchen table while Caleb sat across from me, sketching a new design for a dual-arm lift mechanism. He looked lighter. Not happy, at least, not in the way kids his age should be, but free. Like the weight that had been dragging him down had finally lifted. The court mandated supervised visitation for Dana, but she didn't show up for the first 2 scheduled sessions. Her attorney blamed personal complications. I didn't ask. I didn't care. Then came the arrest. It started with a quiet knock on my front door at 9 a.m. A detective, same woman who had called me months earlier from financial crimes, stood there with a clipboard and a calm smile. Just wanted you to know, she said. Charges were filed this morning. Fraud, identity theft, and obstruction. Your ex-wife is now officially under investigation. We'll let you know how it proceeds. Later that day, news broke online. Local business blogs picked up the story. Chase Langdon, ever the opportunist, released a vague public statement distancing himself from Dana. Something about deep concern and prioritizing integrity in business and personal matters. Caleb saw the headline while scrolling. He didn't say anything at first. Just slid his tablet across the table and gave me a look. She hurt you too, didn't she? He asked. Yeah, buddy, I said. She did. He nodded. But we're okay now, right? Yeah, I said. We really are. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. Caleb and I started therapy together every Thursday evening. At first, he hated it. Said it was weird and awkward. But after a few sessions, he began to open up, especially to Dr. Kwan, who somehow managed to get Caleb talking without even asking direct questions. We rebuilt, slowly. Dinner became a time to laugh again, not tiptoe around invisible landmines. Weekends turned into workshop projects in the garage, restoring old RC cars, building simple robots, painting old toolboxes with wild colors just because we could. One Saturday in early spring, Caleb came to me with an idea. What if we hosted a robotics workshop? For kids. Like a beginner camp thing. I looked at him. You want to teach? Why not? He shrugged. You taught me. It took a few weeks to set up, but we got it off the ground. A free Saturday program at the shop for neighborhood kids aged 10 to 14. We called it Bolt and Brain, a builder's camp. That first day, 8 kids showed up. By the second session, there were 12. Parents started dropping off toolboxes along with lunchboxes. On the last day of the 6-week camp, Caleb handed me a small box. I made something, he said. For you. Inside was a compact metal device, kind of like a miniature winch, sleek and polished, with hand-carved gears. Engraved on the bottom, in blocky little letters, it said, For the strongest dad, the kind who feels. I didn't cry, not then. I just hugged him so hard he squeaked. But that night, after you went to bed, I sat alone in the garage, held the device in my palm, and let the tears come. Not from pain. From pride. From relief. From knowing I didn't just win custody, I won my son's trust, his heart, his belief in me. And after everything, that was the only victory that ever really mattered.